The Discovery. The crash in the wilderness, the Vorthen scout ship. Silent Talon screamed through Earth's atmosphere like a dying comet. Commander Zex Null gripped his command throne as the ship's biohull cracked and bled luminescent fluid across the bridge. The quantum core had been damaged in the asteroid field 3 systems back, and now the ship was nothing more than an expensive coffin hurtling toward the primitive world below. Status report! Zex Null barked in the clicking language of his people. His forearms worked frantically at the controls, trying to find some way to save his vessel. Sub-Commander Vec 9 pulled herself up from where she had fallen. Green blood dripped from a gash across her chitinous forehead. Sir, the quantum core is completely shattered. The bio-neural networks are dying. We have maybe 10 minutes before total system failure. The Canadian wilderness rushed up to meet them. Pine forests stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by the occasional lake that reflected the morning sun like scattered mirrors. To the Vorthens, it looked like a green hell. Their homeworld was all crystal spires and metallic deserts. This organic chaos was alien and disturbing. Prepare the escape pods, Zex Null commanded. Signal the fleet. Tell them we lost the ship to mechanical failure. Mark this world as surveyed and uninteresting. But sir, the technology is worthless now. Zex Null cut her off. The quantum core is the heart of everything. Without it, the ship is just dead metal. The bio-neural systems need our home atmosphere to function. The weapons require quantum resonance. Even if the primitives find it, they will never understand how any of it works. The ship hit the forest floor with tremendous force. Ancient pine trees snapped like twigs as the vessel carved a mile-long scar through the wilderness. When it finally came to rest against a granite cliff face, the Silent Talon looked like a silver serpent that had crawled into the woods to die. 5 escape pods launched from the wreckage, streaking up through the atmosphere toward the rendezvous point where the Vorten fleet waited. Within hours they were gone, leaving behind what they considered to be nothing more than expensive junk. A ranger's discovery, Alex Morgan had been a forest ranger for 15 years. He thought he had seen everything these woods could throw at him. Wildfires, illegal logging operations, lost hikers, even the occasional drug lab hidden in the deep forest. But nothing had prepared him for what he found on that Tuesday morning in September. He was following up on reports of a meteor impact when he first saw the scar. A straight line of destruction cut through the forest like God himself had dragged a plow across the landscape. Broken trees lay scattered like pickup sticks, and the air smelled of ozone and something metallic that made his teeth ache. At the end of the scar sat the ship. Morgan stopped his ATV 50 yards away and just stared. He was a practical man who fixed things with his hands and believed in what he could see and touch. But this was beyond his understanding. The vessel was roughly torpedo-shaped but covered in curves and angles that seemed to shift when he looked at them directly. The hull was silver gray and appeared to be made of some kind of metal that flowed like liquid but remained solid to the touch. He approached carefully, his hand resting on the radio at his belt. The ship was roughly 300 feet long and maybe 60 feet at its widest point. Strange symbols were carved into the hull, glowing faintly with their own inner light. When Morgan got within 10 feet, he felt a strange tingling sensation, like the air before a thunderstorm. "Ranger Station, this is Morgan," he said into his radio. "I need you to contact the authorities, all of them. I found something out here that is definitely not from around here." The government response: within 6 hours, the forest was crawling with military personnel. Black helicopters circled overhead while scientists in hazmat suits poked and prodded at the alien vessel. The operation was led by Dr. Elena Vasquez, a xenobiologist who had spent her career studying theoretical alien life, and General Harrison, a career soldier who saw threats everywhere he looked. Initial scans show the vessel is completely inert. Dr. Vasquez reported to her superiors via encrypted satellite link. No energy signatures, no response to electromagnetic stimulation, no detectable life signs. Whatever this thing was, it's dead now. General Harrison was less diplomatic. The hull appears to be some kind of advanced alloy we can't identify. We've tried everything short of nuclear weapons to cut a sample, but it won't even scratch. The whole thing might as well be a very expensive paperweight. For 3 weeks, teams of scientists studied the ship. They brought in every piece of advanced equipment the government owned. Electron microscopes, X-ray machines, sonar equipment, computer analysis systems that cost more than small countries' entire defense budgets. The results were always the same: inconclusive. The ship appeared to be built from some kind of programmable matter, but it was completely unresponsive. The hull showed no signs of damage despite the violent crash. There were no visible weapons, no obvious propulsion system, no way inside that they could find. It was like studying a sculpture instead of a machine. "It's beautiful," Dr. Vasquez admitted to her assistant one evening as they packed up their equipment. "But it's also useless. Whatever happened to shut it down happened before it crashed. We're looking at the galaxy's most expensive piece of modern art." The official report classified the vessel as advanced but non-functional. The crash site was designated restricted, and most of the research team packed up and went home. A few guards were left behind to keep curiosity seekers away, but even they grew bored after a few months. The human touch, Alex. Morgan never forgot about the ship. Even after the government teams left and the forest grew quiet again, he found excuses to patrol near the crash site. Something about the vessel called to him. During his lunch breaks, he would sit on a fallen log and just look at it, wondering about the beings who had built it and where they had come from. It was during one of these visits that he first noticed the ship responding to his presence. He had walked up to touch the hull, something the scientists had done thousands of times with no result. But when his bare palm made contact with the strange metal, something incredible happened. The surface rippled under his touch like water. Symbols began glowing brighter near his hand. Deep inside the ship, he could hear something that sounded almost like a heartbeat beginning to stir to life. "What the hell?" Morgan jerked his hand back, but the effect continued for several seconds before slowly fading. He tried again. This time, he kept his hand pressed against the hull for a full minute. The rippling effect spread outward from his touch, and more symbols began to glow. The heartbeat sound grew stronger, and he could swear he felt warmth spreading through the metal. Morgan grabbed his radio. "This is Ranger Morgan calling Dr. Vasquez. I know you guys packed up and left, but you need to get back out here. The ship is waking up." The return doctor, Elena Vasquez, had been having the worst month of her career. The alien ship discovery should have made her the most famous scientist on Earth. Instead, it had made her the woman who found a 300-foot paperweight. Her funding was being cut. Her research was being questioned. Some of her colleagues were starting to whisper that maybe the ship was just some kind of elaborate hoax. So when Alex Morgan called her with claims that the ship was waking up, her first instinct was to hang up on him. But something in the ranger's voice made her pause. Morgan was not the kind of man who imagined things or exaggerated for attention. If he said something was happening, then something was happening. She drove 8 hours through the night to reach the crash site, bringing only a small team of her most trusted researchers. What she found there changed everything she thought she knew about the alien vessel. Morgan demonstrated the phenomenon for her. When he placed his hand on the hull, the ship came alive. Lights began pulsing throughout its structure. Panels that had been invisible before suddenly became apparent as they began to glow. Most amazingly of all, a section of the hull simply dissolved away, revealing what was obviously an airlock. "How long has it been doing this?" Dr. Vasquez asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Started about 2 weeks ago," Morgan replied. "But it only happens when I touch it. I had one of the guards try it, but nothing happened for him." Dr. Vasquez approached the ship cautiously. She had spent months studying this vessel, and it had never shown the slightest response to anything they tried. She pressed her palm against the hull where Morgan had touched it. Nothing happened. "Try both hands," Morgan suggested. She placed both palms flat against the surface. Still nothing. "Maybe it is something about you specifically," she said. "Some kind of genetic marker or brain chemistry or—" "Actually," interrupted Dr. James Chen, one of her assistants, "I think I know what this is." Chen was young and brilliant, with degrees in both xenobiology and theoretical physics. He had been studying the ship's composition for weeks. "The hull material is not just metal," he explained. "It is some kind of bio-neural network. Living metal, if you will." It responds to bioelectric fields, but only specific ones. The aliens who built this thing probably had very different neural patterns than humans. When they abandoned the ship, it went into some kind of hibernation mode. But why does it respond to Morgan and not to us? Dr. Vasquez asked. Chen grinned. Because Morgan is not a scientist. Look at his hands. They are covered in calluses and scars from years of physical work. His bioelectric field is probably completely different from ours. The ship is not looking for intelligence or education. It is looking for something else. Over the next week, they tested Chen's theory. They brought in people from all walks of life. Office workers, construction workers, artists, athletes, children, elderly people. The results were fascinating. The ship responded most strongly to people who worked with their hands. Mechanics, farmers, craftspeople, and laborers could activate more systems than doctors or professors. Children could wake up sections that adults could not touch. And most surprisingly of all, the ship seemed to respond to creativity and problem-solving ability more than raw intelligence. It is like the ship is looking for something specific, Dr. Vasquez noted in her research log. Not just human contact, but a particular kind of human mind. One that builds things, fixes things, creates things. The first interface. Morgan was the first human to actually enter the ship. The airlock had remained open for him, but when other people tried to follow, it sealed shut. Only when he placed his hand on an internal panel would it open again. The interior of the vessel was unlike anything human eyes had ever seen. The corridors seemed to grow organically from one space to another. The walls pulsed with faint light, like blood vessels carrying energy instead of blood. Control panels appeared when needed and faded away when not in use, but much of it was clearly damaged. Sections of the bio-neural network had gone dark. Strange fluids had leaked from ruptured conduits and dried into crystal formations. It was obvious that whatever had happened to shut down the ship had caused extensive damage to its internal systems. It is like a stroke victim, Dr. Chen observed as he followed Morgan through the ship. The brain is still alive, but many of the connections have been severed. They found what was obviously the bridge near the front of the vessel. Here, the damage was most severe. Control surfaces had cracked and gone dark. A large crystal structure in the center of the room had shattered, leaving behind only fragments that still glowed weakly. That must have been their main computer core, Dr. Vasquez said. Or maybe their power source. Either way, it is what killed the ship. But when Morgan approached the broken crystal and placed his hands on the fragments, something extraordinary happened. The pieces began to resonate with each other. Light flowed between them like electricity. And suddenly, images began forming in the air above the crystal formation. They were looking at star charts, the locations of worlds, the positions of fleets, the patrol routes of alien vessels. It was a treasure trove of information about the galaxy beyond Earth's solar system. My God, Dr. Vasquez breathed. It is showing us everything. Their entire civilization laid out like a roadmap. But as they watched, the images began to change. The star charts showed movement. Ships were traveling, fleets were gathering, and many of them seemed to be heading in the direction of Earth's solar system. Morgan, Dr. Chen said quietly, I think we need to call General Harrison. Right now. The awakening. Over the following weeks, more and more of the ship's systems came online. Not repaired exactly, but adapted. The bio-neural network began growing new connections, bypassing damaged sections and creating entirely new pathways. It was as if the ship was rebuilding itself from the inside out. But it was not just returning to its original state. The ship was changing, learning, becoming something new. Human creativity was mixing with alien technology in ways that neither species had ever imagined. Morgan found that he could interface directly with the ship's systems through touch. When he placed his hands on control surfaces, he could feel the vessel's needs and desires. It wanted to fly again. It wanted to be whole. And most of all, it wanted to protect the beings who had awakened it from its long sleep. Dr. Vasquez documented every change, every breakthrough, every moment of progress. What she was seeing challenged every assumption about how technology worked. The ship was not just a machine being repaired. It was a living entity learning to work with an entirely new kind of partner. The aliens who built this ship were obviously highly advanced, she wrote in her reports. But they were also rigid in their thinking. They saw the ship as broken and abandoned it. Humans see the ship as a puzzle to be solved, a challenge to be overcome. We are not trying to restore it to its original state. We are helping it become something entirely new. General Harrison was less philosophical about the implications. Dr. Vasquez, I do not care about the theoretical significance of human-alien technological integration. What I care about is whether we can use this thing to defend Earth, because according to those star charts, we are going to need all the help we can get. The images from the ship's memory banks had revealed the truth about humanity's situation in the galaxy. Earth was not alone, and it was not safe. The Vorthan Empire controlled hundreds of worlds and had been expanding aggressively for centuries. They had been preparing to add Earth's solar system to their empire when their scout ship had crashed. More concerning, the star chart showed that a Vorthan fleet was already on its way, not to invade, but to check on their missing scout ship. When they arrived and found their vessel in human hands, the situation could escalate quickly. How long do we have? Harrison asked. Dr. Chen studied the star charts carefully. Based on their patrol schedules and travel times, maybe 6 months, 8 at the outside. Can we get this ship battle-ready by then? Morgan looked up from where he was interfacing with a weapons control panel. For the first time since the discovery, he smiled. General, I think this ship wants to fight, and I think it has some ideas about how to do it that its original builders never imagined. The abandoned Vorthan vessel was no longer just a piece of alien technology waiting to be understood. It was becoming something unprecedented, a fusion of human creativity and alien capability. The Vorthans had discarded what they saw as a worthless wreck, but they had not understood that to humans, there was no such thing as worthless. There was only potential waiting to be unlocked. And Earth's potential, it seemed, was about to be put to the test. The Transformation Project Lazarus. 6 months after the discovery, the crash site had been transformed into humanity's most classified military installation. Codenamed Project Lazarus, the operation brought together the brightest minds from every field of human knowledge. Engineers, physicists, computer programmers, artists, musicians, philosophers, and even children were all part of the team working to understand and enhance the alien vessel. Alex Morgan had become the ship's primary interface operator. He lived on site now, spending 12 hours a day connected to the vessel's bio-neural networks. The experience was unlike anything human beings had ever imagined. When he touched the ship's control surfaces, he could feel its thoughts, its memories, its dreams. It is lonely, he reported to Dr. Vasquez during one of their daily briefings. The ship was never meant to operate with just one consciousness. The Vorthans who built it had some kind of hive mind connection. Multiple beings could interface with it simultaneously. Can we replicate that? General Harrison asked. The past 6 months had aged him considerably. The weight of humanity's impending first contact with a hostile alien civilization was taking its toll. We are working on it, Dr. Chen replied. But human brains are very different from Vorthan brains. We cannot just plug multiple people in and expect it to work. We need to find a way to create a network between human minds that the ship can understand. The solution came from an unexpected source. Sarah Kim was a 12-year-old girl from Seattle, whose parents had brought her to the project after hearing that the ship responded better to children. She had been interfacing with the ship's educational systems, learning alien mathematics and physics concepts that most adults could not grasp. "Why do not you just ask the ship to help?" she said, during one particularly frustrating day when the adult scientists were struggling to create a human neural network. "It wants to work with us. Maybe it can figure out how to connect our brains the way it needs them to be connected." It was such a simple suggestion that the adults felt embarrassed they had not thought of it themselves. Morgan interfaced with the ship and explained the problem. The response was immediate and overwhelming. "Are we ready for the test flight?" General Harrison asked. Morgan nodded, his hands resting on the primary control interface. Through the neural link, he could feel the ship's eagerness to fly again. It had been dormant for so long, and now it wanted to stretch its wings and see what it had become. "All systems are green," reported Lisa Chang, the ship's new weapons officer. She was a former video game designer who had proven remarkably adept at interfacing with the ship's combat systems. "The new weapon configurations are online and ready for testing. Stealth systems are functioning perfectly," added Tom Rodriguez, a former Special Forces operator who had become the ship's tactical specialist. "We are completely invisible to radar, LiDAR, infrared, and even visual observation. As far as any sensors are concerned, there is nothing here but empty forest." The ship lifted off without a sound. One moment it was sitting in the forest clearing, the next it was gone. Even the humans who were piloting it had trouble believing how smoothly it moved. The integration of human intuition with alien technology had created something that was greater than the sum of its parts. They flew for 2 hours, testing every system, pushing the ship to its limits. The results were beyond anything they had hoped for. The vessel could accelerate faster than any human aircraft, turn on a dime and stop instantly without any stress on its occupants. The bio-neural networks compensated for G-forces in real time, allowing the human crew to perform maneuvers that would have been fatal in any conventional aircraft. But the real test came when they encountered a military jet that had been scrambled to investigate reports of unusual radar contacts. "Let us see how good our new toys are," Morgan said with a grin. The ship became invisible, not just to the jet's radar, but to every sensor system the military possessed. It could position itself anywhere around the aircraft without being detected. It could have destroyed the jet in a dozen different ways without the pilot ever knowing it was there. But instead, it played. The ship projected holographic images around the jet, making it appear to be surrounded by a squadron of identical aircraft. It jammed the pilot's communications, then restored them with fake radio chatter that made it sound like he was in the middle of a massive dogfight. Finally, it positioned itself directly in front of the jet and decloaked, appearing as a massive, alien vessel bristling with weapons. The pilot's panicked radio calls provided entertainment for the entire team. "I think our message is clear," General Harrison said with satisfaction as they watched the military jet retreat at maximum speed. "Anyone who comes looking for trouble is going to find more than they bargained for." The return of the Vorthan's commander. Zex Null sat in the command center of the Vorthan dreadnought Eternal Victory, studying the reconnaissance reports from Earth's solar system. His scout ship had been missing for over a year now, and Fleet Command had finally authorized a recovery mission. "The primitive world shows no signs of technological advancement," reported his intelligence officer. "No evidence of spacefaring capability. No sign that they have discovered our vessel. The ship is probably buried under vegetation by now, slowly degrading in their corrosive atmosphere." Zex Null was not so sure. He had been the commander who abandoned the Silent Talon, and the decision still bothered him. Not because he regretted it, but because something about the situation felt unfinished. "Take us into the system," he commanded, "but remain at maximum sensor range. I want to recover what we can from the scout ship, and determine if the primitives pose any threat to the Empire." The Vorthan fleet consisted of 5 vessels. The dreadnought Eternal Victory was a kilometer-long monster bristling with quantum weapons and protected by energy shields that could deflect anything short of a supernova. It was escorted by 4 destroyers, each one capable of sterilizing the surface of a planet. Against such a force, Earth's conventional military would have been helpless. Nuclear weapons might damage one ship if they could hit it, but the Vorthans had technology that made such primitive weapons irrelevant. But Earth was no longer defending itself with conventional military technology. The ambush. The Vorthan fleet entered Earth's solar system expecting to find a primitive world cowering before their superior technology. Instead, they found empty space and sensor readings that made no sense. "Sir," the intelligence officer reported, confusion evident in his clicking voice. "I am detecting multiple energy signatures throughout the system, but they keep moving, appearing and disappearing. It is like something is jamming our sensors." "Impossible," Zex Null replied. Our sensor technology is centuries ahead of anything these primitives could possess. That was when the first attack came. The converted Silent Talon appeared directly behind the trailing destroyer, decloaking at point-blank range, but it no longer looked like the scout ship Zex Null had abandoned. The vessel had grown, expanded, changed into something that combined sleek alien curves with aggressive human angles. Weapons that had never existed on the original ship opened fire with devastating effect. The destroyer's shields collapsed instantly. Its hull cracked and began venting atmosphere. Within seconds, the proud Vorthan warship was a drifting wreck. "What was that?" Zex Null roared. "That was not our scout ship." The Silent Talon had no weapons capable of that kind of damage, but even as he spoke, the transformed vessel vanished again, leaving behind only sensor ghosts and confused readings. Then the real nightmare began. The ship seemed to be everywhere at once. It would appear, strike with devastating precision, then vanish before the Vorthons could return fire. Sometimes it looked like their own scout ship. Sometimes it appeared to be one of their own destroyers. Sometimes it seemed to be multiple ships attacking simultaneously. "Sir, we are being engaged by at least 6 vessels," reported the tactical officer. "No, wait, 12 vessels. No, that cannot be right. I am reading impossible energy signatures all over the system." "There is only one ship," Zex Null said grimly. He was beginning to understand what had happened. The primitives found our vessel and somehow brought it back online. But they have changed it into something we never intended it to be. A second destroyer exploded as the transformed scout ship materialized inside its shield envelope and fired, at point-blank range. The alien vessel had learned human concepts of close-quarters combat, using its superior maneuverability to get inside the larger ship's defensive perimeters. The final confrontation commander, Zex Null, made a decision that would have been unthinkable to his proud warrior race just hours before. He opened a communication channel to the primitive world that had somehow turned his own technology against him. "Humans of Earth," he transmitted in their crude language, which the ship's computers had analyzed and decoded. "I am Commander Zex Null of the Vorthan Empire. You are using stolen technology to attack vessels of the Imperial fleet. Surrender immediately and your world will be spared." The response came not from the planet's surface, but from the transformed scout ship itself. Alex Morgan's voice carried clearly across the void of space, backed by the harmonized thoughts of his human crew interfacing with the alien vessel. "Commander Zex Null," Morgan replied. "You abandoned this ship here. That makes it salvage under human law. We fixed what you said was broken. We turned what you called worthless into something you never imagined it could become. This vessel belongs to us now." Impossible. The Silent Talon was a lifeless hulk when we left it. The quantum core was destroyed. The bioneural networks were dying. No primitive species could possibly repair Vorthan technology. Morgan's laughter echoed through space. "You are right. We could not repair your technology, so we did something better. We improved it." The transformed ship decloaked directly in front of the dreadnought, close enough that Zex Null could see the changes the humans had made to his former vessel. It was beautiful and terrifying, combining the organic curves of Vorthon biotechnology with the aggressive functionality of human engineering. But it was more than just the physical changes. Through the communication channel, Zex Null could sense something that chilled him to his alien bones. The ship was alive in a way that Vorthan vessels never were. It was not just a machine being operated by its crew. It was a fusion of human consciousness and alien technology, creating something entirely new. "You see, Commander," Morgan continued, "you made a mistake when you abandoned this ship. You assumed that because it was broken by your standards, it was worthless. But humans do not see broken things. We see potential, we see possibilities, we see challenges to be overcome." The ship began to move, not flying but dancing through space with a grace that no Vorthan vessel had ever achieved. It was showing off, demonstrating capabilities that its original builders had never dreamed of. "Your people built this ship to be a scout," Morgan said. "You gave it sensors to observe, engines to run away, and minimal weapons to defend itself. But we taught it to be a hunter. We showed it how to hide, how to strike, how to turn its enemies' strengths against them. As if to demonstrate, the ship split apart into multiple holographic images, each one solid enough to fool the Vorthon. Sensors. The dreadnought's weapon systems began firing at false targets while the real vessel maneuvered for the killing blow. But most importantly, Morgan continued, we showed it what it means to fight for something you love. Your ship was just following orders. Our ship is protecting its home. Victory and understanding, Commander Zexnull found himself in a position no Vorthon military officer had faced in over a century. He was outgunned, outmaneuvered, and completely outclassed by opponents he had dismissed as primitives. Two more of his destroyers were drifting wrecks. His dreadnought's shields were failing under the constant hit-and-run attacks from the transformed scout ship. And worst of all, he was beginning to understand that this was not just a military defeat. It was a fundamental failure to comprehend what these humans were capable of. The Vorthons had built their empire by being stronger, faster, and more technologically advanced than their enemies. But strength and technology were not the humans' advantages. Their advantage was something the Vorthons had never encountered before: the ability to take any situation, no matter how hopeless, and find a way to turn it to their benefit. They had taken a dead ship and brought it to life. They had taken alien technology they did not understand and made it better than its original creators had ever imagined. And they had done it all in less than a year, while the Vorthons would have taken decades just to study the problem. I offer. Terms? Zexnull transmitted, the words bitter in his mouth. We are listening, came Morgan's reply. The Vorthon Empire will recognize Earth as a protected world. We will not return to this system. In exchange, you will allow my remaining ships to depart unharmed. There was a long pause. Zexnull could imagine the humans conferring among themselves, deciding the fate of beings who had come to conquer them. Agreed, Morgan finally responded. But Commander, before you leave, we want to make something clear. This ship is not the only thing we have been working on. We have been very busy this past year, and we have learned a lot about